So I hope you enjoyed your break, and I hope you enjoyed the wonderful New Age music of Yanni. So we are going to go into the demos now, and the way that this will work is, so I have 16 recordings that we're going to go through. The order is listed on the agenda, so if you want to just keep track of sort of where we are in that. Oh, and I guess I could show that. Hold on. Gonna share screen, share desktop enables. Okay, so here we go. So yeah, so this is the order of the demos. There is a line here, but if we go through them a little bit quicker, we will start showing some of part 2 in the first 50-minute segment. So without further ado, we're going to start with Stanford's video. And I think my music segues very nicely into the start of this video.
SearchWorks is our library catalog that's based off Blacklight and enables users and patrons to access digital and physical content from the library. So users can enter search terms, refine their results, do all the kind of classic Blacklight things. One thing that's been recently added in the past little while has been integration with article searching. So we call this Articles Plus. So I'm searching for Blacklight Stanford, and I get these results, but I'm also told there's some results found in our article search, and I can click that and get article search results as well. We've also done some linked data experiments in SearchWorks. So this is an example of a search for tenderloin in our catalog. We get results that have the region set as the tenderloin, but we're also presented with this knowledge panel, gives us a map, the area and discussion, and kind of a hierarchy of where this place is located. A little description about it as well.
Due to COVID-19, Stanford has closed all of our physical library locations, and so we've been looking at ways to give patrons access to electronic versions of our material. One of the things we're doing is linking out to HathiTrust material made available to us through the Emergency Temporary Access Program. We've added links and metadata into our SearchWorks index to allow us to link out directly to the HathiTrust book viewer or work page. Through this program, we can offer about 2 million books that Stanford has physical copies of that patrons are unable to access physically.
So this is Spotlight at Stanford, also commonly referred to as exhibits. So this is our local instance of Spotlight. It's been an exciting year for our curators. We reached our 100th exhibit in Spotlight. This year we introduced the ability to search across exhibits. So in this search bar, I'll search for Martin Luther King, and you'll see it pulls up items from different exhibits that feature Dr. King. I click on this group by exhibit button, and it'll give us an overview of the exhibits those items are found in. So you can see there are a lot from activism at Stanford. So in addition to searching for items in exhibits, we've also exposed items in our exhibits platform in our Blacklight catalog. So you can see here, I have a digital object, another photo of Dr. King, and down here by the metadata, you can see the Spotlight exhibits this item is featured in. It's been a big year for image viewers. This year we migrated to using Mirador 3 as our default viewer for items from our repository.
Earthworks is Stanford's geospatial data and maps search interface. It's built using Geo Blacklight, and it allows users to search for, find, download, and use scanned maps and content. We provide access not only to scanned maps and GIS data from Stanford, we provide access to a large section of community data as well. One thing that we added this year was the ability for users to find and use content from Stanford that are non-georeferenced maps. So here's an example, this Army Map Service map of Japan. And we've also added the ability to find, discover, and use index maps. So index maps are kind of built in this open index map format, and users can find the content and start to see where some other maps exist for this as well.
Argo is the management front end to our institutional repository that's based on Fedora 3. The Argo instance has been recently upgraded to Blacklight 7, and we've done a fair amount of work to use Webpacker for all of the assets, JavaScript and CSS. Currently, it holds something like 2.5 million objects, but we're working on an ingest project for Google Books, which will double the size of our repository.
Finally, the Digital Library of the Middle East, due to launch later this year, is our first multilingual Spotlight site that supports both left-to-right and right-to-left languages.
We've also added, which I'll show here in the Gregorian date range, some labels on the axis of the histogram indicating where BCE or CE dates. That is in particular for Gregorian. In addition, for the Hijri date range slider, we have BH for before Hijri, and then H for Hijri.
Okay, so that was the first video. And so what we'll do is we'll allow, if for any questions that come in during these sessions, if they come through, the presenters from each institution can have the chance to respond to them, and we'll unmute you. Did any come in? It's a little hard to keep track of everything while also playing the videos.
Yeah, Nikitas, I haven't seen any questions yet. Do we want to give maybe one more minute for people to use either the Q&A in Zoom or the Blacklight Summit channel just to put in any last questions?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And your minute starts now. So we have a question from Slack. For SearchWorks, what article provider are you interfacing with?
I allowed Jesse to talk there because Jesse's really the one with the most experience with it. Jesse, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully folks can hear me. So we're using EBSCO through their EDS service. A Ruby gem that is available that allows you to interact with their API a little bit more like Solar. So the bridge to hooking up Blacklight to that API through that gem is a bit easier using some of the repository patterns and some of the abstractions that have come out in Blacklight pre Blacklight 7.
Hey, thanks very much. We've also, somebody has a question about the mascot. Or several questions about the mascot. But I think we might be ready to move on to the next one, Nikitas.
Okay, I'm going to, I stopped sharing my screen because I think if I share it in a slightly different way, hopefully you'll see more of the video and less of the bottom of my desktop. Okay, so we got this. Oh, and I need to make sure I have the sound checked. Share. Okay, so next up, we have the University of Georgia and Galileo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Canning from the University of Georgia. I may also be joined at this event by my infrastructure architect, Kevin Cottrell. Technically, we work for the University System of Georgia for a unit called Galileo. Galileo provides content licensing and technical support for libraries statewide, including K-12 institutions, public libraries, technical schools, and colleges and universities, both public and private. We are housed at the University of Georgia Main Library in Athens, though. I have been working on Blacklight since I started here at the library in 2015. From this summit, I'm primarily interested in ways that discovery platforms like EDS and Summon are integrated into Blacklight sites. I'm also interested in the latest movements in the Blacklight code base, such as Vue components. I also like to stay on top of the latest and greatest in Blacklight as a library catalog, so that one day I can convince my organization to move away from Primo. So our first Blacklight site, as you see here, is our Digital Library of Georgia site. Our Digital Library site serves as an aggregator for cultural heritage organizations statewide and in some cases nationally. Currently, we partner with over 700 organizations to include their content in our site. As of today, we have about 750,000 records. This site has been live for a couple years now. It runs on Rails 5.2 and Blacklight 6.20 with the usual plugins, advanced search, gallery, maps, range limit. Beyond Blacklight and these plugins, we've added browsing options to meet some of our partner organizations' needs. So you can browse our content by county, and by selecting a county, you apply a facet to return only the results from that county. We also have a long list of our partner organizations under the institutions browse. And so from this, you can see the collections that we get from those institutions. You can learn about that institution, go to their homepage, or just bring up all of the items from that institution. Recently, we've integrated a IIIF viewer of OpenSeaDragon, which serves up images from our Cantaloupe server. And this enables us to better display the hosted content, so our locally hosted content that we don't just get from our partner organizations. Here's a cool map of Savannah from a long, long time ago. So we also have integrated recently full text content for a lot of our items and making them discoverable by indexing that full text content. Our next big move in this site is to work to integrate our historic newspaper collection into the Digital Library of Georgia. Currently, that's out in another site that's running on Chronicling America, which has been more or less totally deprecated. So we're looking to unite these two sites and just have one central site where everybody can access all of the content from the Digital Library of Georgia. What's most new in terms of Blacklight for the University of Georgia is the Galileo site. Galileo is the statewide organization, and so this site gets used by all types of institutions, elementary schools, high schools, the public library down the street. So we license content statewide, and we make it discoverable and accessible through this site. Currently, the site is just a simple A to Z list and a search box to take you out to EDS. We've worked long and hard over the past 2 years with our statewide partner groups to determine the best way to improve this experience and add value to Galileo. Started with strategic planning 3 years ago, and now it's finally culminating in an actual redesign of the site. Much of what we do in this site is handle authentication and authorization for our licensed resources. This is complicated by the fact that we have almost 500 different institutions that we support and over 3,500 different kinds of resources. So in 2018, we signed on with Open Athens to help us simplify the management of this task. This project is still ongoing and will be for a while as we have lots of institutions still to go. Currently, we support lots of different means of authentication, and thank you very much to the developers of the Warden Gem. We have a simple passphrase authentication, which you can see me type one in now, and I'm logged in as the University of Georgia. We support IP authentication. We support Open Athens authentication, of course, Evergreen, which is our public library ILS, and LTI from our learning management systems, a variety of learning management systems. So this site provides a discovery experience of two sorts. First, a simple and quick way to search EDS and go off to EDS. But we also provide this Blacklight-powered search box to search resources that we license. So since I'm UGA, I can search for law resources, and I can see a big list of all the resources that UGA has access to that have to do with law. So this is the UGA experience, but a public library in Atlanta and a technical college in South Georgia will have access to a distinct set of resources, but they'll all come and have the same experience of this Galileo site. Elementary, middle, and high school students also will use this site to find resources and complete their assignments. And we will tailor the view based on their institution type so that they only see resources that have been designated as acceptable for their grade level. In our next major iteration, we plan to unite these two discovery experiences into one by leveraging the EDS API and a bento style of search results. So we hope to get to that pretty quickly, because that's really the biggest thing that our users have asked for, is an improved experience than what the EDS search results offer. So a few notes about our infrastructure is we are mostly on-prem, but we are starting to make use of some AWS products such as S3 and Aurora in this Galileo project. We use a solar cloud on version 666 for our production services, but we are bringing up a new solar cloud using version 851 for this new project. We handle our CI/CD through GitLab CE, which is also locally hosted and has been great. So I look forward to hearing from everybody else and talking about Blacklight for quite a few hours. And I hope to see everybody again in person soon. Bye.
We've got a question from Slack. Could you please elaborate on the facets by county via a map? It looked really cool.
Hi. Sure. We have information about the boundaries of our counties. Georgia's got 170 plus some counties, the second highest amount of any state in the U.S. And we take the subject metadata and we extract the counties out of it. And then there's a bunch of code that I wrote a couple years ago that's now escaping exactly how it works. And where I'm basically getting the facet response from Blacklight, and that's where I get the counts for all the different counties, so I can give it a different shade of color and generate the links to apply that facet in the search results. I'll post up a link to the controller that handles all of that. You can take a look at it. Definitely one of the proudest things that I did in that project.
Hey, thanks so much, and congratulations on such a cool feature.
Thanks.
Okay, let's go on to the next demo. Thank you for your work, Mike. Okay, so now Brown University is up next, and Hector Correa provided this video.
Hello, my name is Hector Correa. I'm a software developer at Brown University. What I'm going to show today is the work that we have done in our Blacklight application, and most of these changes are really enhancements that we have gotten out of Solar more than Blacklight, but they are within a Blacklight application, so I think they will be relevant for this group. Our discovery tool, which is the tool that uses Blacklight at Brown University, this is the homepage. If you search for something, we show the users what material we have in our catalog, what we have in our journal subscriptions, what we have in different formats, what lives in our detail repository, which is a different system, so on and so forth. And this is the part that is the Blacklight application section of the application. We have facets, we have search results, so on and so forth, what everybody's used to in a Blacklight application. The general architecture of this application is that we have data living in our ILS that get exported to MARC files, and those files are injected through Traject into Solar. So the Blacklight application really searches this Solar. And what you saw in the bento boxes are separate repositories that don't live in our Solar installation. So the major changes that we worked on this year was that we migrated from Solar 4 to Solar 7. This was a big upgrade for us, jumping 3 versions and as many years of changes in Solar. And we run into several issues. We blog about our process, what we did to work around these issues. Some of those major issues are described here. For example, the ICU folding filter was not configured by default, the use of local params and dereferencing, which is heavily used in the version of Blacklight that we're using, which is 5.19. This is very restricted in newer versions of Solar, so that caught us by surprise. And the blog post that I mentioned describes how we work around these things. Another thing that we did is that we decided to use Solar Manage schema, in which you define your fields through an API rather than editing an XML file. This works, and it works really well. I'm not sure that it's 100% better than before, but it's the way they recommended that you create your schema. One good thing about this is that it was very easy for us to recreate Solar cores in development, in our local boxes, and then in production by using a shell script. But the reason we migrated to 7, one of the biggest gains that we got when we migrated to Solar 7 is that we were able to use the native CJK, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean search features of Solar. When we were using Solar 4, we had not configured anything for CJK, and our searches on CJK languages were a disaster. Now, when somebody searches, this is an example of an author search, using CJK characters, the system detects that and uses specific fields for CJK that are configured for the proper tokenization and indexing of CJK values. And the number of results that we get is pretty accurate. In the past, if I were to disable, for example, the new feature, you will see that we get 447 results. And in this case, this is totally inaccurate. This is the correct number. A title search, for example, if I do this, we got 6 results, and these are actually the right titles that you will expect. If you disable the CJK feature, again, you get that we get something like 4,000 results, which is totally inaccurate. The way we are indexing our data is by actually using TXT CJK fields. We use CJK rules in Solr. And in our catalog controller, if we detect that the user is entering text in Chinese, Japanese, or Korean, we automatically use those fields. Otherwise, we use the fields that we used to use before that don't end in CJK. This is how our catalog controller looks. This is the index method. We say if the user is searching in CJK, then we switch our search parameters to use the new fields. One of the nifty things that we learned in this process is that if you want to detect if the user entered text that is in Chinese, Japanese, or Korean, we didn't know how to go about that. If the user enters something in ASCII, something that we know how to handle. We can write our regex that will look if the values that the user entered are from A to Z, from 0 to 9, and a few punctuation characters, right? Easy enough. But we don't know enough about the alphabet in Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. But turns out Ruby supports a special kind of regular expression in which you can say, I want the character set called Han, which is what is used in Chinese, or the one that is called katana, that is used in Japanese, and so on and so forth. So by specifying a regular expression like this, we can detect if the user is searching in what we call CJK searches. The last thing that I'll talk about is that we switch from using JRuby and Traject to run concurrent processes in Traject to just having bash execute a function in the background and using the wait command in Linux for us to wait. So the way this works, if you have written concurrent code in other languages, this should be very similar. This is a loop through all of our files. And we process one and we send it to the background and we see, hey, have we reached the maximum number of concurrent processes that we want? No. Go for the next one, put it in the background. Once we reach the number, we wait. Once those 2 processes finish, then we continue the loop. This is giving us performance that is very, very similar to what we were getting before. And we're pretty happy with it. So if you don't want to use JRuby, in our case, we didn't want to have different configurations in our servers. And is this server using JRuby? And how do you do this in JRuby? We decided to use standard Ruby across the board, and we've been very happy with it. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that great presentation. Any questions for Hector? I'm not seeing any questions, so thanks for a great presentation.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next presentation, which is from data curation experts.
Hi, we're going to present on Blacklight as a front end for Hyrax. On the left, you'll see the fabulous Beth Sadler, who's a senior developer at DCE, who helped put together this presentation, but was unable to be present for the recording. In the middle is me, Max Cadle. I'm a developer. And
on the right is me, Rachel Cadle. I'm also a developer.
And all of us, again, are from Data Curation Experts, aka DCE. We worked with the Emory team on creating a Blacklight front end, which we call Lux or digital, for their Hyrax application, which is called Curate. So Curate is there on the left and Lux is over on the right. Now, you might wonder, why would you use Blacklight as a front end for Hyrax? After all, Hyrax comes with Blacklight already integrated. Well, there are a couple major reasons why a couple institutions have decided to use this pattern. One reason is for scalability. So this, by separating the Blacklight front end from the Hyrax management side, you can separate the performance load of the repository from the performance load of the discovery system. So if you're doing a giant ingest of objects into the repository, that's not going to affect your user experience for your discovery system. The other main reason is for usability. So you can tailor your UI, you can tailor what metadata fields get shown and how to the audience that's using it, because the needs of repository managers is going to be really different from the needs of students and researchers. We did run into a couple challenges with using Blacklight as a front end for a Hyrax application. You might think you might just be able to point your discovery Blacklight to your Hyrax Solar, but we found that it took a fair amount of massaging to get them to fully align. Another challenge was DevOps capacity and resourcing. On the Lux and Curate projects, we had a lot of resources allocated to writing the software, but relatively fewer resources allocated to putting the application into production and being able to scale it up. And a big investment in DevOps from the very beginning can be really valuable. After all, over time, hopefully you're going to spend a lot more time maintaining your software in production than you did writing it.
Some highlights of the project. Excuse me. We integrated Universal Viewer into our Blacklight application so that the images can be seen at the same time as the metadata. DCE has a guide in its playbook for how to do that. We follow a pattern of adding the software version into our site footer, which allows for better tracking and bug reports. And we also have a guide for that in our playbook. We used JMeter for both performance testing and smoke testing. Even with a fairly simple test suite, you can get meaningful information about your site's response to different levels of load. A big advantage of using JMeter for both tasks is that you can use much of the same test suite for smoke testing and load testing, which minimizes developer time. And having an automated smoke test lets you quickly see that many aspects of the system are working as expected without a lot of manual overhead. Thanks so much, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the conference.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Any questions for DCE? I'm not seeing any questions, so thanks for the presentation.
Well, it looks like there's a quick question probably for Rachel about what the difference between a load test and a smoke test is from Hector.
Yes, so a load test is to see how your application performs with many users hitting it at once. And so you set it up to run through multiple simultaneous users and measure response times. A smoke test is basically an answer to the question, is this thing on? So you release a new version and you want to look around and make sure everything's working. If you automate that, then you won't miss something vital when you do that check.
Thank you, and thanks for catching that question. Slack froze on me for a little bit there.
Okay, in the interest of time, we're going to go on to the next presentation, which is Linn-Benton Community College.
I'm a librarian here at Linn-Benton Community College. We're a small community. Hi everyone, my name is Sandberg and I'm a librarian here at Linn-Benton Community College. We're a smaller community college in Oregon with a lot of open source involvement. We've got 2 Blacklight applications in production and I'm excited to show them both to you. The first is Find It, our discovery layer. We've had Find It for 5 years this November. We're using Blacklight 7.4 on Rails 6. This article data is coming over from EBSCO EDS, and we've got a bento style results list. One of the big things I've added to stock Blacklight are these citations here, generated by SiteProc. I've been using SiteProc in production for a while, since the default Blacklight citations were not as accurate as we wanted them to be. As I have time, I'm trying to contribute that back to the community as a Rails engine that you can just add to your Blacklight app. I've never made a Rails engine before, so I'd really appreciate any advice you're able to provide. Another big project is to stop treating Solr as so much of a persistence layer and maybe move the app to the cloud using Azure. I'm the only person working on Find It, so I really value this opportunity to get together and connect with other Blacklight folks. Our second application is Community Archive at LBCC, our institutional repository. I work on this alongside our open educational resources librarian, Michaela Willie Hooper. It's very close to a default Hyrax installation with a few little additions here and there. Our focus is a little different than you might see with other institutional repositories. One of our main use cases is to share and showcase OERs that our faculty have created or remixed. There are already so many places for faculty to search for OER, we didn't want to add another one. So we also wanted to make sure that our faculty were not having to spend a lot of their time submitting their OER to all these various sites. So we used the Blacklight OAI gem to make our repository harvestable with OAI PMH. OER Commons harvests the OER materials from Community Archive at LBCC, meaning that our faculty only have to deposit in one place and have one less place to search. I'm really looking forward to this summit and hearing what the rest of you are up to. Any questions for me, I guess? I see a question about the Ruby or the Blacklight OAI gem that works with the current Blacklight version. And yeah, it does work with the latest version of Blacklight. I think there hasn't been a release for a little while, but if you're using the code from master, it works just fine.
Okay, thanks, Jane. I'm going to go up ahead with you, Penn, next.
This is Michael Gibney, a senior software developer at the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. Penn's Franklin Discovery Interface is a Blacklight instance that draws most of its catalog metadata from an Alma ILS backend. The catalog also incorporates materials from HathiTrust, both public domain materials that were previously accessible, and also the new special access ETAS materials that are newly available in response to the COVID-19 situation. I want to spend most of the time talking about a handful of features that are unique or new or potentially otherwise interesting. First, I'm going to talk about the databases and article index interface. This is presented as a separate tab or separate bento box in the bento search results. And it behaves very much like a standard database and article A to Z list with custom database subjects and database types, a custom hierarchical taxonomy for assigning subject headings that are particularly relevant in the context of databases. But this is actually all driven by the same index that drives the main catalog. And these filters that are specific to the database and article A to Z list, including the letters here, which are a standard A to Z list interface component, and all of these special subjects are actually facets that appear contextually depending on whether the database and article index format is selected. So as you can see, this means that users are able to access a standard like A to Z list interface, but it still keeps them within the fold of a normal catalog search, allows them to use the A to Z list functionality in conjunction with all the functionality that already exists in the catalog. And it also takes the opportunity to familiarize people with the options that are available to them and doesn't force them to choose where they're going to start their search from. So this approach also holds promise for other cases where certain filters or facets would be applicable only for specific subdomains and particular use cases. In particular, we're interested in potentially exploring something similar for sound recordings or video recordings, which could have their own special filters and facets associated with them that you wouldn't want to just apply generally across the entire catalog. Speaking of the entire catalog, we're going to hop over to the catalog here. And I will take this opportunity to present subject heading browse. Penn also has an author heading browse implementation that behaves very similarly. And I'm going to enter this can search because it's a good example of the type of functionality that is provided by our subject heading browse in particular. The idea here is to allow users a way to navigate from this kind of hierarchical taxonomy and pivot that down into a more enumerative ontology that is also part of what LCSH provides. Currently, this is very LCSH centric, but we have hopes and plans to potentially extend this to be configurably applicable to multiple ontologies, including inter-ontology cross-references as well as intra-ontology cross-references. This is all driven by facets, so it's all information that is included in the index itself. There's no separate database to maintain. It does require, for now, at least running a forked copy of Solr, so it might not be to everyone's taste as far as what your organization is willing to take on, but I think it's still worth exploring the potential here. The fact that this is backed by facets also means that the counts that are associated with these headings are completely dynamic. So if you filter your search to sound recordings, all of the counts change, and we're able to narrow in on specifically these particular battles that have sound recordings that are particularly associated with those heading concepts. That's all I have time for now, but if any of this is interesting to you, I'm always happy to talk about this or other topics. So thanks.
Do we have any fast questions? A lot of people are just saying, wow. Ha.
I'll jump in the absence of questions, but the A to Z list thing is very achievable with stock Blacklight. It requires like a little bit of fiddling here and there. All that's available in the public repository, though, as far as I know. I'll try to drop a link in regarding that later. Okay, so plans for cross-references, that's a big, that's a large topic that we probably don't have time for, assuming that the call for fast questions was not referring to the, I don't know what that acronym stands for, but yeah, I'm happy to talk about that later. And I think, yeah, there's plenty to discuss there if people are interested. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we will start up with Yale again. It looks like we're running a little bit behind schedule, so I think what we should do to make sure that we run through these efficiently is at the end of the presentations, ask the questions in the Summit, Blacklight Summit Slack, or in the Q&A part of Zoom. And after we're done playing the rest of the presentations, as appropriate, we'll assign the panel, we will assign the presenters from those institutions as presenters so they can answer those questions. Okay, enjoy your break.